Hey guys, it's Dee Dee. Today I'm here to talk to you about our St. Catharines project. This was an investment that we did during COVID. And so obviously things changed during the entire process and the time that we actually had the property. And so I wanted to talk and focus really on investment strategy and the importance of a backup plan because this property we had one idea of what was going to happen, and what actually ended up rolling out was something completely different. So I'm going to get into it. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Dee Dee. I'm an investor. I own a contracting company. We work with investors to do renovations around the GTA here in Ontario, Canada. And I'm also a real estate agent. Again, more focused on investment properties. But that's really what I love. It's what I do. It's what I'm passionate about. I love helping people kind of create that wealth. It's been years that I have not paid a mortgage on my houses just because I'm able to leverage rental properties to do just that. So I love helping other people do the same thing. And that's a little bit about who I am. So let's get into it. St. Catharines, St. Catharines here in Ontario, it's an area that is definitely up and coming. There's a ton of stuff going on right now or over the past, say, 16 months. What's been happening within metropolitan areas, and we've seen this across Canada, across the US, you've got people that are, due to coronavirus, moving out of these very condensed kind of areas and able to purchase property for a lower price elsewhere because they can work from home, more flexibility, et cetera, et cetera. St. Catharines is an area that is definitely very busy when it comes to tourism in the summer here in Ontario. But other than that, there's not a ton of stuff going on. Definitely a really nice city. It's got a school there, so really great. Got a university and a college. So again, it's good. There's things that are moving. However, in terms of something that you would see in Mississauga or Toronto or the areas here, not quite the same infrastructure, but we do see that shifting. So this project here that we had, it was a student rental. We purchased it. I'll get into it. What we wanted to do with it and what we ended up doing with it were two completely different things. So we purchased this property in September of 2019. We purchased it for $285,000. There was a reason for that, and I'll show you that in just a moment. It was a student rental. It was basically being rented for $450 a room. There were 6 bedrooms, and when we got it, in 2 washrooms, and when we got in there, it was currently rented. So there were 6 rooms. They were rented, 2 baths. The basement was absolutely terrifying. So there were 3 bedrooms on the upper floor, 3 bedrooms on the lower floor, and the lower level was like I didn't even feel comfortable renting out to people. However, these rental contracts were already in place. Um, so there was, not much I could do. These students were happy to rent there. It's amazing what some students will rent for. These were international students that had come over. They were renting. Um, and, just, they were happy with it. But as soon as they were kind of out, we knew that we were going to be doing renovations on this home. So this is what the basement looked like. When I tell you it was scary, it was terrifying. So this is literally, you can see on the left-hand side, that's the kitchen that they actually leveraged in the basement. That's the sink. That's all concrete. Those are concrete walls, exterior walls. The previous owner had owned the property for quite a while, and she did some really weird stuff. Like that shower just exited into a common area. So bizarre. The toilet and the sink were on the other side. I have no idea. The ceilings weren't finished. As you can see here, there was tons of plumbing that was done. It was very interesting. The structure of the house was really good. The plumbing, a lot of it was also fairly new and quite well done. She even had a water heating system. So this was something that cost about $15,000. So no air conditioning in the house, but she did have a heating system that literally, it's like radiators, if you know what those are. So it's radiant heating via water, and it was so efficient. Like our heating bills in the winter were just so low, $15,000, but your ceiling looks like this. I mean, there's a balance, right? You got to find a balance, but obviously she had not found that balance. So this was actually what it looked like. This was upstairs. That's the washroom upstairs. Again, it was was not in the best shape. It was okay. Everything was in good shape, but I mean, just look at it. It's quite dated. It was just a bit of a mess, and we knew we had to flip the switch on this. So at that time, so when we purchased it, being rented, $285,000, we basically put 10% down. We didn't put 20, we put 10%. We had to pay, it was $1,250 with mortgage and taxes. On a monthly ongoing basis. So property tax and mortgage, $1,250. Utilities were about $300 a month. Again, remember there was no air conditioning. And then rent that we pulled in with $450 per room with the 6 rooms was $2,700 a month. So we basically profited. It was a great cash flowing property. We profited $1,150 a month, give or take repairs and other costs, that kind of come with that. Normally, when it comes down to rentals, you want to account for 5% kind of a contingency of the purchase price, just for you to be able to keep that as a reserve fund should you need to do the roof down the road, plumbing, electrical, any of these fixes that you got to do, right? But we knew we were going to obviously be gutting this whole place. So that's what it looked like. So we were making $1,150 a month on top of, having all our utilities and bills and everything paid off, which was great. And so you'll find often with these rental properties, when you can pull rents like this, it's normally a pass off. So you may be able to purchase a house. It's quite a higher amount, but it's in an area where there is very high passive appreciation. So just the area itself is up and coming, things are moving, stuff is going on. And so without doing anything to the home, you'll have quite a bit of appreciation passively, right? Over the years, your house will go from $400,000 to $600,000. In the area that we were at, that was not the case. There was not a lot of passive appreciation going on. The only way that we could make this house be worth more money was to renovate it through active appreciation, and the passive appreciation would not be a component of that. So you'll often find that properties that cash flow very high like this for very low amounts, they're most likely, in 5 years down the road, if I hadn't done anything to this property, I might have been able to sell it for like 300 or 310. I don't know, if that, right? So it wasn't an area that was actively appreciating or passively appreciating strongly. So that's what it looked like. And what we wanted to do with it was, there we go. We wanted to refinance it. So we wanted to refinance it. We were thinking, okay, we got the approvals for it. We were able to refinance it for $385 once all the renos were done. So basically $100,000 more. When you do that, you have to keep 20% in the house. Anytime you refinance a house, you have to keep 20% in. It's like putting a 20% down payment. So basically $385 minus 20%, keeping that in the house is your down payment. The equity in the house is $308,000. So the bank was going to give us $308,000 in a new mortgage, and we would be able to pay off that old mortgage with that money. So our rental cost was about $45,000. Our existing mortgage was $260,000. So basically, once we used that $308,000 via the refinance to pay off the rental costs, to pay off the old mortgage, we were only really going to profit $3,000 after paying that all off, right? So that's kind of where it sat at. After the refinance, the mortgage and the taxes would be $1,550. So instead of $1,250, $1,550. Utilities stuck around the same, $300. But the rent, we were able to up that rent per room to about $500. So, we were able to improve the rent from $2,700 to $3,000, which would mean that we would have the exact same profit as we were going to have before. The only difference here, obviously, is through this refinance, we could renovate it, we could command higher rents, the house would be in a better shape, it would be worth more. We would be able to pay ourselves back for everything that we had put into the house, and from there, basically, have that money back in, right? So we wouldn't have had to pay for any of it. That was the whole point of the refinance here. So we had all that kind of lifted out, all of that was ready, and that was grand plan, right? We were going to do that. We're going to refi, and then we are going to take the money that we'd put in there and we were going to reinvest it somewhere else. So we're going to take like all those rental costs and everything that we'd put into it and do it again on another property, right? So although we weren't making more cash flow per month, it was still worth it for us in the end because we were going to be pulling out a large chunk of equity there, right? Back out that we had already invested. So this is what we did. We renovated the house. For those of you who followed along, you know how interesting that was. But we renovated the house basically top to bottom. So everything was redone. That's that same scary bathroom. So redid all of that. This is the basement. So obviously big transformation here. Really actually drywalled everything, put in a drop ceiling. There was a ton of plumbing. So with that radiant heating source, we had plumbing all through the ceiling. And if for those of you who know, if there's ever a leak, anything that happens, drywall is so tricky to repair. And so with everything going on in that ceiling, we did a drop and we were able to put pot lights in. So it still looked bright, still looked open. However, that was the plan. We did the renos. What actually happened was quite different. So the first thing that happened within that area was that a nearby hospital was torn down. This was the original hospital of St. Catharines. And what had happened was the hospital was actually closed for, I think it was about 4 years. But what happened was, and it was close. It was a few, like it was kilometers away, a few streets down, like maybe 6 or 7 streets blocks down. This hospital had been closed, and over that 4 or 5 years that it was closed, the entire homeless population of Niagara moved into that hospital. So basically just squatters. And the whole area around it started to deteriorate, but really just that in kind of right around that proximity of the hospital. We were still quite close actually to downtown St. Catharines, which starting to up and coming, some cute little donut shops, all that good stuff, and really close to the university there. So we were still a little bit out of reach. And so when we purchased it, the hospital was still up. When we purchased that house, hospital was still up. And all those people, little did we know, were living in it. They ended up tearing it down. So it was like during the time that we were purchasing. And so all of those people had to disperse. Where they dispersed was into the park. It was a beautiful park with like a creek, but they dispersed into that park and creek, which is actually just across the street and down a kind of ravine from our house. So these people, it was like tent city. It was insane, but all of these homeless people dispersed into that area. So the neighborhood had started to deteriorate, which we did not, of course, plan for. We didn't know about. We didn't know that it was going to happen. And the only other piece here was COVID. And so with COVID, all the schools shut down and we couldn't rent to students because the schools were closed. So Brock and Niagara College put out a statement saying, we are closed, like everything will be online learning, et cetera, et cetera. So we had a student rental and we weren't able to rent it to students because there were no students there. So we were only able to rent to single families, and the highest rent that we could get was about $2,600, and that area was deteriorating. So you can imagine the types of families that walk through those doors. When I was looking to rent it out, I was thinking there's no way, like I would not trust these people with my life. And if you understand the Ontario, basically the tenancy rules, regulation, the laws, they are quite strict and they do play in favor of the tenant. So if I did have a bad tenant, it's almost impossible to get them out, especially during COVID, especially during the winter. There were so many things going on. The renos took longer than we thought. That was because we were renovating another house at the same time. And also, Yannick, my husband, my partner, he had lost his job because of COVID. Myself, I had scaled back on my job. And so all these things were happening, and, COVID kind of spurred this all together. So this was really tough. The other piece was for that refinance. We were able to get the refinance with BMO. However, they were so stringent in terms of what they wanted from us because they stopped loaning for student rentals. All of the banks stopped loaning money for student rentals. So we had to play it off in a sense that it wasn't a student rental. And it was really difficult to do that, especially when you've got kind of like locks on each of the doors and stuff. So any appraiser that came in was like, "Oh, are you sure this isn't a student rental?" We're like, "Yeah, it's not. It's a single family home." And meanwhile, it was 100% a rental. So that's kind of where that's at. That's what happened. We had no idea this all was going to come into play. And so what we did, we finished the renovations in about November. And what we did was we actually Airbnb'd the home for November and December. December alone, we brought in 3K. So we made basically what we would have made on the refi in rental. The only piece is for anyone who's done short-term rentals, they're not easy. You've got people coming in and out of the house, you've got cleaning fees, all this stuff. We did bring in that $3,000, which was great. Of course, that floated more than the mortgage and extra cash flow and all that good stuff, but it is a lot of organization on your end. So not something I was really interested in doing. And I don't think I'll ever be interested in doing it, to be honest. I'm definitely more a long-term rental person, just a lot less work, to be honest. So that's where that's at. What we did was we listed the home and we sold it for $390,000. So we ended up selling the home for only $5,000 more than we could have refinanced it for, right? So you have to think about this. We sold it for $390,000. It's $5,000 more. It's marginal. If we had refinanced the home for $385,000, we would have had an asset sitting there being paid into by somebody else. Like my mortgage would have been paid off, and at the end of 25 years, the house would have been worth, 450,000, depending on what happened, right? 25 years down the road, if not more. So I could have like a free $450,000, or here it is, I sold the house and I made a $65,000 profit. That is the difference between flipping and renting, right? It's the difference between wealth and rich, right? And so basically sold the house for $390,000. Our mortgage was $260,000 minus our rental cost of $45,000. And then $15,000 in terms of all closing, legal fees, all that good stuff. So we made a $65,000 profit after paying off all the rentals we did and everything. Honestly, it still wasn't horrible, but again, that's not really for us, it's not the goal. The goal, we were flipping houses in the beginning and that's all we did. And we didn't know there was the option to do rentals. And I wish that I had known, because the houses that I could have turned into rentals that we used to own and refi instead of selling them would have, obviously been it would be very different today. But the whole piece is, you don't know what you don't know. You move as you go, and it's not like we ever lost anything. So great. So this is the whole piece. We knew that when we bought this property, should we need to sell it, we had the ability to do the improvements to sell it for a higher price. We knew that. So that was the strategy. That was the exit plan that we did have. Should we not be able to refi for whatever reason, not that we ever expected that to actually be a thing, but we knew doing this work, we would be able to raise the value of the house and sell it. And we were able to do that. So pretty easy sale. Everything went through. Again, 65K profit, not huge. Like we're used to making a little bit more than that, I would say, on flips. But regardless, we were able to make the money back. So, and more. So we took that and obviously invested it elsewhere. But that's how we were able to pivot on this property. Now, if you have a flip and you're flipping it and you're not able to sell it as a flip, are you able to rent it? Maybe not the same scenario, right? Because if you've got a flip, you're flipping a single family home. It's got 3 beds, 2 baths, whatever it may be, right? Even it may say, for example, it's a monster house. So you're doing a massive flip. You're doing like a second floor addition, all this good stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be able to rent it and actually pull in the rents that will cover your mortgage, especially if you refinance that house. If you're able to, does it mean that you're actually able to pull in the rents that will cover that mortgage being so large and being a single family rental? The key here is it's kind of the flip for us. We always aim to do rentals. And then if we need to fall back, the contingency is, are we able to flip this house? 90% of the time it's a yes. However, if you start out with a flip and you say, okay, if I flip this house or I'm not able to flip this house, am I able to rent it out and actually profit off of it? I would say 50% of the time the answer is yes, 50, if that, right? So this is why we always start with that rental strategy. We call it the BRRRR strategy, because it is, you don't get as much cash out. Like if, again, I was going to make $3,000 on the refinance, right? And here I have $65,000 in my pocket. It's like, okay, what are you complaining about? Of course. But at the end of 25 years, I would have had $450,000 that I never paid a penny towards. It just would have been mine in terms of equity in the house that other people paid. So really there's a balance there, right? Yeah, it takes a little bit longer, but I could have refied even at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever that looks like, and still being able to pull out maybe $50,000 for a different investment or for my kid's school or whatever that looks like. So you have to just think, are you looking for quick cash? Flips are great for that. Or are you looking for an investment? Are you looking for long-term wealth? And that's really where buy and holding property, that's where that comes into play. So that's what we did. That was our exit strategy. Exit strategies are so important, like understanding that they exist and what they could be are key. So the first thing is whenever you get into the house, you need to know your options. So you need to know your exit strategies, plural, for your investments. It's always good to have two. So what's going to happen if you're not able to refinance? What if you can't qualify for a mortgage? What if you lose your job? It's blah, 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 blah. We need to understand and you need to be cognizant of what else could I do? It may open doors for you that you never thought of before. You need to look at what makes sense in the long run, like long term. So ideally, you keep property when you can, right? This area was not really appreciating. So the flip was not, it didn't hurt my heart as much because of course, we bought it for 285 and did the rentals and whatnot, could have gone up to 450 for sure in 25 years. I mean, I have no doubt about that, if not more, but ideally, you want to keep property where you can. This area was not appreciating at a very fast rate. And we forced out via active appreciation with the rentals that we did all that we could at that time. So we have Gale, and I've talked about another property we had versus Lincoln. Is same idea. Like we've always had the same kind of exit strategies, just, very slightly. We could have done this. We could have sold so many of other properties, but the strategy long-term didn't make sense. For here, Gale, it wasn't such a bad option for us. Again, based on the area, based on what was happening. When kids go back to school, I have no doubt that house will rent it'll rent like crazy, right? Like I'm sure she can even get the lady who bought it, she'll be able to pull $550 a room. The rooms are nice. Everything is updated. It's new. It's close to downtown, close to bus routes. It's right next to one of the campuses. Like it's a great location for students. The thing is, we didn't have any idea what the heck was going on and all the schools were closed. So were we going to rent to a family? Was I going to continue doing Airbnb? Half the time Airbnb was shut down during the pandemic. Like it just wasn't worth it for me, right? We had other stuff to do. So that's really how we leverage that, how we leverage different exit strategy. There's always a way. That's one thing you have to always think of. Getting into investing and looking at that, you can say, oh my God, like that happened to you. That sucks. Like, oh, that's scary. I'm scared I can't rent it. I'm scared I can't refinance it. What if I don't qualify for the mortgage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's always a way, always. There's always something that you can pull out of this, like in terms of investment, in terms of real estate, there's always something. It's really just good to be prepared beforehand, right? So if you have any questions about investment strategies, whatever that looks like, you can reach out to me again, Dee Dee. You can connect at Dwell Well by Dee Dee. We also do renovations. So we do renovations specifically for investors around the GTA. So anywhere from Niagara all the way over to Oshawa. And that's under our renovation company, Combi Contracting. So you can check out some of the stuff we do there. We've got some really talented investors, really, really strategic that we love working with. So if you are interested in that stuff, reach out to us as well, connect at combicontracting.com, or you can just give me a shout. My number's here as well. So thanks so much for joining me today. Again, lesson is just focus on the strategy is key when it comes down to investments, and always know your options because you definitely always have them. Thanks so much. And we'll talk to you soon.